Nation podcast. Welcome back, boys and girls. It is January 5th, 2022. The Bears beat the piss out of the Giants a couple days ago. We have media people fighting with MVPs. We have people reporting that other people are getting fired, and then those people disputing that report when they're clearly lying. It's a lot of stuff going on. It's a great time to be alive. It's fine to say it's a great time to be a Bears fan, I guess. I mean, it's a very exciting time because we are 5 days out, theoretically, from
presumably
a new regime. Presumably, good word there. Yep, sure, we'll go with that. Of a new regime turning over, and we can start to kind of have hope in this dumbass franchise again. So, that being said, Kevin Lapka, how are you doing?
I mean, I got to say, it's a little bit more exciting than weeks past, is it not? Like, we had those weeks, like 8 through 16, that were pretty much like they were nothing. They were hell, and everyone was like, I don't want to listen to the Bears. I don't want to talk about the Bears. Is he going to be fired? Is he not going to be fired? There's rumors. There's left and right. There's everything. Now we have more reports that seem to be more reliable. We have some beef we get to discuss. We are closer to, like you said, that final, the impending doom of Matt Nagy, as you just tweeted out. And that feels good because you're finally heading in a direction you believe as an organization that will lead you to bigger things in the future. We're going to talk about who may be in charge of those decisions and who may be the key to, the Bears having success in the future once they do make that move. But for a long time, like even in the mid-season, early season, like there was still questions about whether he even was going to be fired. Like we kind of came to that mutual decision, like, I don't know, like week 10 or something. We're like, yeah, okay, I think he's gone. But before that, like there was so much confrontation, so much back and forth. So to have a pretty solid idea, Jake, that we know he's going to be gone and knowing that that's coming in, like you said, 5 days, that's a good feeling as a Bears fan.
Yeah, so if you've been living under a rock the last 24 hours or so, Boomer Esiason on his show on WFAN said that the Bears have informed Matt Nagy that he will not be returning after the season, that Sunday against the Vikings will be his final game. Bears had media availability today. Matt Nagy said, I have heard no such thing. Nobody's had that conversation with me, which makes it the second time in roughly a month, give or take, 5 weeks or so, that Matt Nagy has had to publicly say that he has not been informed that he's lost his job, which is insane. It's so Bears that it is the second time in roughly 5 weeks that we're having this conversation of, oh yeah, there was a report that Matt Nagy, this is going to be his final game. And then Matt Nagy is saying, no, I haven't been told anything like that. Presumably he's lying to save face, or they just haven't told him yet, which makes sense. Why would you tell a guy, hey, by the way, you're fired, but we want you to coach on Sunday? That's so dumb. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Whether Matt Nagy has been informed he's lying for some reason, or the front office just has not told him that he's been fired, whatever, I think we are all on the same boat that Matt Nagy will not be returning. Like Kevin said, we all came to that conclusion, regardless of the Boomer Esiason report, quote unquote. Regardless of that, we came to that conclusion weeks ago that Matt Nagy was not going to be coming back before Thanksgiving even. We're like, this guy's done. We all knew that. So this is all song and dance for nothing. 5 days from now, we're more than likely going to be waking up to the report, or, Matt Nagy has been fired by the Chicago Bears, blah, blah, blah. I think we're all accepting that. Now, the interesting part gets to, are we going to see Ryan Pace's name included in that, whatever you use, ESPN, Bleacher Report, The Athletic, what have you? Is Ryan Pace's name going to be attached to Matt Nagy's as also fired? The prevailing thought, and I lean this way as well, is that Ryan Pace is going to be retained. Now, whether this is a good thing or a bad thing is a matter that we can get into in the next couple minutes here. But Kevin, right now, we're in the same boat that Matt Nagy's gone. Right now, where are you leaning as far as Ryan Pace's job security?
I think there's two things. I think he's safe regardless. I'm going to go on. Good. We've been speculating for weeks past. We're so close to the date. Let's lock in predictions. I'll lock in what I think is going to happen. I think Nagy's gone on Black Monday. Everybody sees that coming. And I think Pace gets retained as the president of football operations, and they hire a new GM. I think that is what is going to happen. You get that football guy up there, to replace Ted Phillips. Ted Phillips either moves somewhere else in the organization to just handle finances or whatever the heck he wants to do, or he's gone completely. I would not be surprised if he just stays in the organization just so he's involved in some way and he can put that on his resume. But Pace is there. He needs somebody to check him. So what they're going to do is they're going to get somebody else. And I don't know who that may be yet. I haven't thought about names for that. I thought about head coaching names, but not GM names. But I think Ryan Pace is going to stay. And every Bears fan should really be happy about that. And they should be happy or, content about it. And they should be content for if one thing happens. If he hires a head coach that everybody agrees on is a solid choice, then everybody should be content. Because why? Look at Ryan Pace's biggest mistakes in the past, right? He's definitely mismanaged contracts. And last week on Sunday was a big reminder of that, seeing that you paid a guy who had negative passing yards $18 million. Like that was a big blow to Ryan Pace last Sunday. But what were his two other misses? Hiring Matt Nagy or really hiring any of the coaches, John Fox as well. And drafting Mitch Trubisky.
The John Fox thing I kind of get because that was his first hire and you knew what you were signing up for then. You knew
the talent wasn't there.
Yeah, you knew it was going to be a full teardown. You knew John Fox was not the guy that was going to be there in 5 years.
Right. So then you can't. So he's like, what do you say? Like 1 for 2 then on coaching hires?
Well,
like
here's the
it's not
thing,
a terrible hire.
Here's the problem though, and this is why people are upset. It's because those 2 misses are the biggest misses you can make in that role. A draft pick that high, first of all, using it on a quarterback. Obviously, Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes on the field becoming what they became stings even more. And then Matt Nagy not being the guy he's the guy you brought in after you whiffed. Well, we didn't know you whiffed yet, but after you'd already made that quarterback selection. Matt Nagy is the guy you tout him as this big offensive guy. He's so excited to work with Mitch Trubisky. Okay, that fails. Then you paid Glenn and all that money before you even drafted Trubisky. Then you use the draft capital. You trade away draft capital, bring in Nick Foles, who was supposed to replace Trubisky, who had replaced Foles, who had replaced Cutler. Like this carousel goes around and around and around. Like this is a whole.
Well, yeah.
And I don't know if you read this article. I think it was Adam Johns wrote it, friend of the show. He at The Athletic, he was like, Jay Cutler was in attendance to watch Andy Dalton beat Mike Glenn. Andy Dalton, who was brought in to replace Nick Foles, who was brought in to replace Mitch Trubisky, who was brought in to replace Mike Glennon, who was brought in to replace Jay Cutler. It was this whole circle of crap that it was brutal. And so that's why I think people are so up in arms over, because I'm with you. I think Ryan Pace is going to be retained in some way, shape, or form. I do think it's probably I agree with you. I think the most likely outcome is that it's a president of football ops type of situation. I don't think he just stays as the GM. But I think that's why people are upset, because the 2 big misses are the 2 biggest misses you can make.
But the reason why I say people should be less upset about that is because one of those you've already locked down. You don't have to have the impending worry of now what happens at the quarterback position. You're locked in. You know what you have for the next 10 years.
You've locked it in.
Oh, come on. Okay.
I'm just saying.
To everyone's liking.
You assume you have made the correct choice here, that you have this.
And I don't think we'll know that for years down. I mean, I don't think we would know if he was the wrong choice for years down the road. I think we could very quickly know that
there are people on Twitter who are saying that, Justin Fields is a bust, which is insane, but
there will always be those people. But so that's what I mean is like, okay, so you have one locked down. There was the 2 main areas that you mentioned back in the circle, the full circle thing you just talked about. That was terrible. And then, the 2 head coaches. So when I'm talking about what they do at the head coaching position, if they hire a guy like Jim Harbaugh, a guy like, a consensus guy where everyone's kind of all in on it, then you're like, okay, we kind of have, we think at the moment we have the 2 things that worried us most about Ryan Pace locked down. And then we know we have limited draft capital in the early rounds. He's a phenomenal late round drafter. He's going to load up with players who are going to give you production, assuming the coaching staff gives them the opportunities in year 1. He's going to be aggressive in free agency. Whether he makes the right contract moves or not, he's going to be aggressive. He is going to pay somebody a heck of a lot of money. He is going to find you a receiver, whether that receiver be Devontae Adams or whether it be Damiere Byrd. He's going to go out and find somebody for you. He's going to reload the roster for you. So that's what I mean where I say, like, I wouldn't say happy. I think that was a wrong word to use, how Bears fans should be feeling, but maybe like more comfortable knowing that you don't have to worry about, his him missing on Trubisky and Glennon and all the guys in the past. It's over. It's done. You can wipe that from your mind. He hit on Fields. You have it going forward. Don't think about that. And now the head coach, is more of a evergreen thing where you don't really know, but as long as on day 1, it's not the wrong choice. If they don't go out here and hire some nobody out of nowhere or some consensus guy who's like, got issues in the past or something, or you're going to be comfortable with where you're at. Are you not? Like if they do those two, like if they have those two things locked in by mid-January, you're feeling comfortable about what else Ryan Pace can do to surround the two constants that haven't been there in the previous, 7 years.
So
6 years, however long.
So here's why I get why people would be upset with Pace staying at all. I understand why people want him fired because you're right. Yeah, he was able to get you Fields. Yes, he's going to do the things that you need to fill out the roster. However, if you keep Pace, that's kind of sticking with the status quo, and then you worry about things not really changing. Sure, yeah, you can bring in the right coach, but the prevailing mentality of the Chicago Bears won't change. And there in itself is the problem, because what have we said for the last however many years about Ted Phillips is that as long as you keep him, the status quo doesn't change and the brain trust doesn't change. And from the top down, it doesn't change. You keep the status quo. And that's the problem, is that you need a reshaping of the brand of the Chicago Bears. You need to move into this new era. And if you keep Ryan Pace, you risk that not happening. Now, is there a point where, okay, Ryan Pace gets promoted to president of football operations, let's say, and he just has his hands on the new stadium and the relocation and the very, very big pictures, which he has shown he's very good with. The upgrades to Hallis Hall were him. The moving of training camp was him from Bourbonnais back up to Lake Forest was him. He did that excellently. That was definitely for the best and what was needed for the team. He crushed that. Now, can he do those things and then delegate to a GM who can have full autonomy of the roster and of the day-to-day and of the coaches? Yes, obviously Ryan Pace, if he was the president of football ops, and George McCaskey and possibly Ted Phillips would still need to be a part of that coaching search and of those roster decisions. But can they just trust a GM to do those things and put their signature to it? I don't know if they can. We've seen time and again that the upper levels, the higher powers that be of the Chicago Bears are inclined to meddle more often than not. That, I think, is where people get worried, because if you put Ryan Pace, okay, yeah, you kick him upstairs, but is he going to allow a GM to have that autonomy that he needs, that free range to work the roster and work a coaching search in the way that he needs? And I think that's where it comes from, the worry of Ryan Pace being retained and that status quo not changing.
That's fair. Now, when you talk about status quo and you talk about the brand and who the Chicago Bears are, obviously, like, there's different definitions to that. And it starts at the top. But when you talk about how it relates to the play on the field, how much of that brand and that mentality of being a Chicago Bear and all of these different aspects are contingent on organizational structure versus coaching? Like, because to me, when you think about the product on the field and you think about, how you can really change the image of the Chicago Bears, I think that can be done with the right head coach. I think, Mike Ditka, right? Like, there was no issues with the Bears at the time, but Mike Ditka defined that era. The owner, the GM, that they did not define the 1980s for the Chicago Bears. It was Mike Ditka who defined it. And he brought in this style of play. He brought in, this Chicago Bears smash mouth type football in 1985 or previously. And then they won the Super Bowl in 1985. So I don't know how. The question to you is, because like the conversation, as you mentioned, like always is like, it starts at the top. Everything starts at the top. This is true. Like, if you want to see like those changes as far as hiring the right people, as far as hiring the right guy who's going to make the change on the field, then yeah, those things start at the top. But as far as getting the guys ready to play each and every Sunday, making the right decisions, firing them up, changing your brand of football, to me, that starts at the coach level instead of at the GM or the president of football ops or owner level, because most of the time, with the exception of a few GMs like Jim Irsay, who's in the locker room after every single game with Indianapolis, Jerry Jones, who's also the GM and the president, he does it all. He's technically everything for that team, and a few others that I can't name off the top of my head. They're kind of apart from what is going on inside the locker room, the owner, that is. So that's why when you talk about status quo and you talk about brand and you talk about who the Chicago Bears are as a team and what that leads to, when you talk about what they do between the hours of 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock on Sundays, that comes from the coach, to me, more than it comes from whichever GM or president of football ops you may hire.
See, but that's the problem. The fact that we're even talking about Mike Ditka and the 85 Bears, like, That was 36 damn years ago. Like we are perpetually stuck in this. Oh, but the Ditka Bears and the Super Bowl, like that's over. The problem, like,
we're not stuck in it. It's just an example.
No, but we are, because that's the only example we have. And that's what the point I'm going to make. That's the only example we have. At a face value, what you see, like what you see in the window, yes, is the coaching and the roster. And like you said, the brand you build on Sundays. The reason that has been so fleeting, though, the Ditka success, the Super Bowl success, is because the structure, what's underneath and what you don't see, has remained the same. You don't have GMs and president of football ops who are able to do what they need to do to continue that success. Yeah, you get it here and there. You get it in 85. You get it in 06. You get it in 2018. But that's why you don't have that prolonged success that you look for. Yeah, it's great when you have that one run and when you have that one good team. But we want more than a flash in the pan. You want to be the Packers. You want to be the New England Patriots. You want to be these teams, and that's why they're able to do it, because they have these GMs and these president of football ops who, yes, the coach is great, and that's great when you're window shopping and you want to see, the bells and whistles. Great. Awesome. But if you want that prolonged success, you need to have the structure and the building behind it. Like you can't just keep using 85. Like it was damn near 40 years ago. We can't keep using that as a crutch. You have to move on, and you can't just have this one coach, because Nagy was supposed to be that. Nagy was supposed to create this culture and this guy that, reshaped the Bears on the field and something to get.
But what was missing? What was missing? Because so you're bringing up, you make good points, and you say they've never done it consistently, and so we've named the problem. The problem is consistency. You've had flash in the pans. You've had, the years, Lovie Smith's years, but even in Lovie Smith's years, they were good, but they weren't ever great for a long period of time. They were great for certain years, but they weren't ever the Packers or the Patriots, where you were winning division championships 3 years in a row. What has happened is you've had good coaches. You've never had a good coach and a good quarterback coexist at the same time. And I think that is what could be really important. And you talk about how the structure and how you create consistency and how you create a winning culture. Yeah, like obviously that starts up top, and that starts with, those guys in the organization. But you need the right coach and the right quarterback for you to win consistently. All the teams that you could mention in the past, in the inception of football, who have had dynasties, who have had good runs, who have year after year competitive playoffs, championship runs each year, it's not because their organization is really good. I mean, it typically is, but it's because they have a damn good head coach and they have a damn good quarterback who are on the same field at the same exact time. In the past, the Bears have never had that. And that's why I don't think you've ever seen that consistency. So you have the opportunity to do that now. And I'm saying your point is right, but if we've never seen it like that, as Bears fans, we've never arguing
that with you. And I get what you're saying, but my point is, like, that's still just window dressing. You need to have someone who is prepared to roll with the changes, as REO Speedwagon said, and just keep adjusting and keep going. So then once it's time for that new head coach and that new quarterback, you have someone who is prepared, boom, ready, has it set up where you can move into that next phase. Yeah, you have a down year or two, but it's a quick turnover. Then you're right back in the saddle for that success. That's what I mean, where you need that brain trust and you need to have that outline, so to speak, or that just an outline or the bare bones of, all right, couple of years down, okay, we'll be mediocre, we'll be bad even, and then we're right back to it. That's what I mean. The Bears' thought process, they haven't had anyone who's been able to build that. And I think that's what people are scared of, going back to Ryan Pace, is you keep the status quo, because he hasn't so far. And I get what you mean about, okay, maybe now that if he gets the right head coach to pair with Justin Fields, maybe he can be that guy as the president of football ops to make that building and start to lay that foundation for that kind of process. But I think that's why people are scared or angry or whatever emotion you want to use of keeping Ryan Pace around, is because, okay, so far it hasn't worked out except for 1 year and you only got to the playoffs. You didn't even win a playoff game. So I think that's why people are like, okay, well, we need to just start fresh. And the REO Speedwagon reference, you're welcome. But that's what I mean. Like, I think that's why people are more wanting someone who could be like, all right, we'll start it all from scratch. Yes, you have the quarterback. Start it from scratch. Get a new guy, get a new GM, hopefully get a president of football ops, and then you can start from the ground up. And then maybe in 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, you can become the Packers and the Patriots and those
Okay.
franchises that have prolonged success, because people have seen what Pace is. He hasn't shown the ability
Right.
to do that yet. He could, I don't know, but I think people are
I
more
think he could.
inclined. People are more inclined, obviously, as football fans, as sports fans, we want the new shiny, we want the new stuff because we've seen what the old is already. We're how many years into this Ryan Pace experiment? It's kind of been there, done that. You want to see if someone else can do it.
So we're going down an interesting rabbit hole now because we both think Ryan Pace is going to be in the organization. Now, you talk about status quo remaining if Ryan Pace remains in any scenario. I don't think that's necessarily true. And this is where I think
don't get me wrong. I see both sides. I see the benefits of keeping Ryan Pace, and I see why people are upset. That was my argument for why people are upset with a potential retention of Ryan Pace.
Okay.
I think he could do it. I also understand why there is a desire to move on, because I agree it hasn't worked so far. I see both sides. Am I playing middleman Jake right now? Yeah, I definitely am. But
it's the right way to play it. No one's going to pound the table for either one, honestly. Like, I don't.
Well, that's not true.
There's more people who are going to pound. Well, there's more people who are pounding the table for him to be gone than there are people pounding the table for him to stay.
Yes,
but yes, there are. But I think a majority of the fans who are listening, who are going to listen to this podcast, are going to think similarly to the way we are. But my message to the people who are on the side that you just detailed of, why, like those who would be worried if they kept him. Let me pose you this about the whole status quo thing and about things not changing. And this is why I say we're going down the rabbit hole. It depends on the guy you hire. If you hired, there's a name floating around that's been floating around for years now. It's Peyton Manning, right? Peyton Manning, he did that little, he did that preseason bit with the Bears guys from, what are those guys' names from Saturday Night Live? Who they have like a name for that.
Everybody knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, they did that thing. He has a picture of Virginia McCaskey. Everyone's like, okay, Peyton Manning to the Bears, great. And I would be all for it. But in a situation like him, you could keep Ryan Pace as GM, as whatever, as president of football ops, and bring in Peyton Manning in any role. And Peyton Manning alone would change the status quo and change, I think, the whole mentality of that organization. So that's why I think those things can exist. But now, what the question becomes: who has more power then? Does the president of football operations or GM have more power when you talk about those types, structurally changing things, fundamentally changing things? Because you look at the really good example is the Cubs, right? I mean, that is the best example when you think about hiring the right president of baseball operations, in that case being Theo Epstein, and then having a GM like Jed Hoyer, who really was just kind of almost in the back most of the time. He never got any attention. And those things worked, but Theo was the guy. In your opinion, who has the power? Because one is technically higher on the hierarchy. If you were to build a pyramid in all technicalities, it goes coach at the bottom, GM above coach, president of football ops above GM, owner above president of football ops. Is that not the hierarchy? So does that apply to how you are going to fundamentally change an organization?
Well, so that's what I mean. That kind of ties into what I was arguing for people who want Pace gone. Because I think if you fire Pace, that signals more of a sweeping change, and then a possibility of going from that top of the pyramid down from owner. Okay, then you get a president of football ops who then gets the GM, who then they work together to get the coach. I think that's why people are more hesitant to the Ryan Pace kicked upstairs idea, because then it's like, okay, well, this is just the same guy who has failed for the past 6 years. That, I think, is the very key thing here. Because Pace leaving signals, okay, we're all in. We know we have Fields. Let's get the right people in place, and go from there. And then maybe in 2 years, we're right back into that contention. I think that's you kind of led yourself to the water in a roundabout way, but you got there.
Yeah, I see.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, the Pace being fired as well as Nagy would signal a complete change. Whereas you keep Pace, you kick him upstairs, kind of represents a half-ass of it. We're kind of like, okay, yeah, you're kind of getting there to like sweeping changes, but you're half in, half out. Like when you were a kid and it'd be summer and the air would be on, and your parents would yell at you inside or outside, you're letting all the air out of the house. It's kind of like that. Like, you keep Pace, you make him president of football ops. It's kind of like that. All right, pick which way you're going to go, inside, outside, because you can't really half-ass it here. You got to kind of choose. I think that's the big key there.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. And I understand that, but I still because we both think it's going to happen. I think that there is still again, it's middle. There's reason to be concerned, but there's also reasons to believe that if they do hire the right guy, that right guy can take precedent over how this organization is going to be run, and then that guy can make fundamental change with Pace still being there. I think that still can happen.
Well, you have to trust
maybe,
ownership. You have to trust ownership to be like, okay, Ryan Pace, you're going to do this. You're going to be in charge of the new stadium and the relocation. Now you delegate the day-to-day roster stuff to the GM, whoever that may be. And then they work.
But he should still have say in the football decisions.
Agreed.
Because that was the whole problem in the past.
Right. But so that's the thing. He has to be okay with having control of the macro, the big picture, and being able to delegate to a GM. Can he do that? Probably. I don't think Ryan Pace is a very headstrong guy. Who knows? We really don't know that much about him. He's kind of a mystery man. But that's the thing. You have to trust in the Bears ownership and the people that make decisions. And as Bears fans, that's hard for us to do because of the million ways they've hurt us before. And I think that also is part of we're going to be upset if Ryan Pace gets retained, because that's still trusting the past and trusting the status quo. And they've hurt us so many times already.
Right. And now, so here's what's interesting too. And I'm starting to think about other organizations around the league who do these things the right way. In a lot of situations when, they're on the broadcast and they're talking about organizational issues with the team or things that are good about the organization. Most of the time, the camera does not pan to the box that has the owner in it. It pans to the box that has the GM or has the president of football ops. So I do think, and this is what needs to happen. If you are Louis Riddick, if you are Peyton Manning, if you are any of the potential GM, president of football operations candidates, you go up in that meeting, in that hiring interview, and you say, look, great interview. Here's what I need from you, McCaskies. I need full autonomy of what I need to do. This organization runs through me. I control everything. And if they don't get that, kick them to the door.
Well, remember, Chris Ballard tried to do that. Remember?
Did he? I don't remember that.
Chris Ballard tried. Remember, Chris Ballard was this close.
Remind me.
Chris Ballard was, so when this whole process was going.
When Emery was fired.
When Ryan Pace ended up becoming the GM, it was down to Ballard and Pace, and I think one other person. It might have only been them two. And Ballard was this close to being the guy. They loved everything that Ballard was saying. He had his plan, and it's worked in Indianapolis, but he said, I want autonomy. I want to say so. And they said, no can do, Buster. See you later. And Ryan Pace said, yeah, I'll work with you. Whatever you want is what I want. And they said, that's a good dog. You're hired. That's what happened. Chris Ballard wanted exactly what you just described. And they said no. And so that's where we have to put our trust again in the McCaskies. Have they learned from that? Can we trust them to put Ryan Pace in an upper office in a higher position, and then trust Ryan Pace to kind of play hands off? And most Bears fans, myself included, would say, no, we can't trust that because it hasn't happened, because we almost saw it however many years ago, and they said no. And now Chris Ballard has fielded a very, very competitive Indianapolis Colts team ever since then. Ever since that happened. It took a couple of years, but I mean, the last 4 years, the Colts have been fielded playoff teams. Now they can't get over that hump, and that's, whatever. We're not, this isn't the Colts Nation podcast, but he's done a really good job, and people consider Chris Ballard a top GM in this league.
He is.
I mean, you have to trust the McCaskies, and I am with every other Bears fans. You have every reason not to. So that's part of the problem.
That is part of the problem, and I think that's part of the reason they like Ryan Pace so much. Is you go back to that time that they were hired, it was like, oh, you're gonna be our little puppet, and that's great, and we love our little puppet, and that's why you might stay here even through all the shit that's happened the past 3 years. I mean, that's the whole reason why Jake and I think he's going to stay, is because we've heard from multiple people on this show. Adam Hogue said it. I think Jarrett Payton said it. He said they have undeniable love for Ryan Pace for whatever reason it may be. The McCaskies have undeniable love for Ryan Pace, and that's part of one of the reasons why. Now, is there any sort of optimism to believe that, like you kind of hinted at it, after the past 6 years now, after seeing everything, George McCaskey's older now. Virginia just turned what? She just turned 99. I think she just turned. It was her birthday,
It was
literally
her birthday
yesterday
yesterday
or today. I think she turned 99, which is incredible. Is there any sort of is there any sort of hope that
it's today, 99th birthday today.
Today, January 5th, 99. Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was today or yesterday. There you go, 99. Is there any hope that, look, they're apparently aware too of the opinions that they have, the public opinion of the fan base. Apparently the McCaskeys are aware of these things. I mean, how can you not be? It's been loud recently. Do they say, look, we want ownership of the Bears because this organization means a lot to our family. We have built this organization through our family lineage. This means a lot to us. We don't want to sell the team, but we're tired. We're tired of doing this. So what we're going to do is we're going to sit and watch the games in the box every Sunday, but we're going to make the president of football operations and GM have full autonomy and full responsibility of this organization, and we're just going to be the stakeholders of it. That's all we're going to do because that's what George Halas would have wanted to do. He would have wanted to keep this organization in the family lineage for as long as possible, but we're going to step away and we're going to give it to somebody else and let them take the heat if things go wrong because they're sick of it. I think there's a chance that could happen. I mean, because clearly they don't care that much. Clearly George McCaskey does not care that much if they're good or not. So if all it is week after week and year after year, it's you're getting shit. This guy sucks. Sell the team, and you want to break from that, then you have to go into that meeting and say, yes, Peyton Manning, yes, Louis Riddick, yes, whoever it may be, you run the organization now. You have full autonomy. We're going to sit back, own the team, watch the Bears, build you a new stadium, and you're going to do everything else so no one can blame us now if things go wrong. So I think there's maybe a chance that could happen now. Again, that's the optimistic side of me thinking because we think that they're likely not going to sell the team. But is there any hope that can happen? I mean, it's not entirely illogical.
I'll believe it when I see it. And
I will too.
So let's circle this back to what we're 99% sure is going to happen, which is that Matt Nagy is going to be fired. Circling back to, actually, I want to address this comment. Many people think it's time to get input for former Bears. We've been seeing this for a long time. Jerry Azuma, friend of the show, he tweeted, and I think Lance Briggs has tweeted it, I think even starting last year, and maybe a couple years ago, but I remember he was very vocal about it too, that former players want input on the team. Like they have thoughts, they have opinions on, hey, you're doing this wrong. I think that is completely fair. I think that is 1000% something that organizations should be open to. And I think it says a lot about the Bears that they haven't. And I think that kind of answers your question, Kevin, of do you have faith that they'll be able to be hands off? All right, all you guys. The fact that they're not even open to opinions from guys who used to be in the building, greats like Lance Briggs and Jerry Zuma, and they just, no, we know what we're doing. When they clearly don't, that's why I think people don't have faith. But anyway, back to my original point of, let's circle this back to what we are pretty sure is going to happen. Matt Nagy is going to be fired come Monday, come 5 days from now. And let's start with the prevailing rumor, and which has a lot of connections. We've heard it before. We've heard it a million times. People want Jim Harbaugh to be the next coach of the Chicago Bears. No, thank you. Keep it moving.
Oh, come on.
Don't need
Why?
it. Don't want it. One, and this is before, like, this is why I think he won't be hired, first of all. He knows too much. He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows all the inner workings of the Bears, of the family, and they're going to say, nope, you know too much. See you later. We can't keep you at arm's length.
What does that even mean, though? We're like
he knows like where the proverbial bodies are buried. He knows everything about this organization. He knows.
But what's wrong? That's good. That's good.
But that's why the McCaskeys don't want it. They like, you know too much. See you later. Stay at arm's length. See, they want someone who they can, with Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, where they can have their claws dug into you, and you're the puppet, and what you say and what you know is only what they see fit to tell you and show you. Jim Harbaugh knows too much. He was in the building. He was friends with everyone in that building. Like, he knows too much. So
they can kill two birds with one stone. They can kill two birds with one stone as far as bringing in the former player and getting his input.
Bring in someone who knows things. I think who can go out there and say things that they didn't already approve. Is basically what I mean. Like,
if they were head coach of the Bears, they wouldn't do it.
He can go up to the podium and say things because he already knows them. He's not reliant on the McCaskies for information.
You think Jim Harbaugh's a Trojan horse? That's what you think. You think he's going to come in there and blow the organization up.
For football reasons, I also just don't think Jim Harbaugh's an NFL coach. Yeah, he had a run of success with the 49ers. He got fired for
44-19-1, 3 NFC championship games.
If there was legitimate NFL interest, it would have happened already. He's been allowed to stay at Michigan and stew in Michigan for a reason. If there was a return to the NFL on the table, it would have happened already. What's the reason he stayed
in Michigan, Jake? What's the reason he stayed in Michigan? I'll tell you.
He's run his course. He ran his course in the NFL. He had a good stint.
No, that's not why he stayed in Michigan.
He had a good stint. He flamed out. He has a place at Michigan. He's enjoying his time in Michigan. Had his success. Finally beat Ohio State. Great. Stay there.
There you go.
Don't need it.
No, see, okay. So you know where I go to school. Where do I go to school?
Yes, you go to Ohio State, Kevin. Yeah.
This is what happened with Jim Harbaugh. All right. I believe Jim Harbaugh is a man who really wants, like, when he gets into a role, he is going to bust his ass. He's going to do whatever he can to achieve what he needs to achieve in that role. I don't think he's a quitter. I think he's a good head coach. I think he's a good players coach. I think he's a good developmental coach. He did his time in the NFL. He did what he needed to do, right? He got not really did what he needed to do. He got 3 NFC championship games, a Super Bowl appearance, never won a Super Bowl there in the NFL, but kind of got to the top consistently. And then you know what? I just need to change. The 49ers were on the down. They fired him. He goes to Michigan. Now he's in Michigan, right? Year after year, they're losing. They're losing to Ohio State year after year. He's not going to leave that program until he builds them back. Until he builds them back to what Michigan was known as a top team in the Big Ten Conference, who's going to be able to beat Ohio State each year, who's going to have a chance to win the college football playoff. So what happened this year? He beats Ohio State. Boom. Box checked. Next, college football playoff. Can Michigan win a national championship? Can they be in contention again? What do? They get throttled by Georgia. So here's what is going on in the mind of Jim Harbaugh. He says, look, I did what I need to do. I beat Ohio State. I broke the 10-year drought. We're good. Move forward. I know now, though, Michigan will never, ever have a chance to compete for a college football playoff championship. It won't happen. No other team in the Big Ten will. It's never going to happen. It's going to be Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, year after year. And that's a different podcast for someone else who's got a college football podcast who can talk about the CFP. But if you're Jim Harbaugh, you achieve what you need to achieve. You brought Michigan back. You brought him back to relevancy. You're good to go now. You don't have to have any more allegiance to them anymore. You can move on. You can go make he's making good money in Michigan, but you can go make the big bucks and go back to a team that you loved for years in Chicago. And that's why I think there's the reports now are he's leaning to a return to the NFL. And I think the only possible team, Jake, that he would be leaning towards is the Chicago Bears. I mean, you talk about the Warriors from the organization. No. If he were to choose between any of the openings, he would obviously, I think, choose the Chicago Bears. So he did what he needed to in Michigan. Done. I have every reason to believe he is ready to move on. If that is your worry, if you are worried that, because I know a lot of people's worry is, well, is he really going to leave? Yes, I think if he wants to, he will, and I think he wants to. So
I just don't think, it's not my worry that he's not going to leave. I believe of course you're going to take unless you're Nick Saban and you are literally the king of Tuscaloosa, like you're going to leave a college job to come in the NFL. Of course you will. Yeah, that's the goal, isn't it? Like
there's some differences when you've been in the NFL before.
Sure, but I mean, that's what Kingsbury's doing in Arizona, and we've seen it before. But my problem isn't that Harbaugh might not leave. I think that people are romanticizing this idea of Jim Harbaugh as a Bears coach. Former player, checks the box. Former quarterback, so obviously he'd be great with the quarterbacks. Has had success in the NFL. I think we're romanticizing this idea of him over someone like.
But those are all valid things.
I would, yeah, sure.
Romanticizing, those are valid things.
But I would much rather have a Byron Leftwich or Brian Daboll or a coordinator from an NFL team. Like, I don't need to go to college for what we think Jim Harbaugh can be. Like, I don't.
Well, it's not what we think we can be. It's what we know he can be, Jake. We have this is
we don't know that. We know what he was. We know what he was, and he left the NFL for a reason. How do we know he can repeat that? We can't pin our hopes to a 49ers team success from 7 years ago. 6-7 years ago?
Why not? Why not?
Because it was 6-7 years ago for a reason. He's at Michigan for a reason. If that was able to be continued, he'd still be in San Francisco. I'd much rather pin my hopes to the potential of a Leftwich, a Dabble, a guy who's currently in the NFL with a high power, than pin my hopes to a dream that happened 7 years ago.
It's not a dream. So here's okay. Well, we've talked about this before. You're playing a risky game, Jake. You're playing a very, very risky game. This happened, and it's happened consistently. Joe Brady gone. Matt Rule is going to be gone. You look at a lot of it is very hiring the offensive new coordinator.
Matt Rule came from Baylor. Matt Rule came from college.
Okay. But I'm not going to compare Jim Harbaugh to coaches that came straight from college because he's had NFL experience. He's not in that same category as them. That's why I'm not going to compare him to Kingsbury or any Pete Carroll. I'm not going to compare him to anybody because he's been in the NFL. It's not like this is new for him. He's coming to the NFL. He might not know how to work with an NFL team. That's always a worry for coaches who come from college. So I'm not worried about that. But I am done. With hiring the guy who had a really good offense on another team. And no one can really point the reasons why. You could say Kellen Moore has a really good offense, but I could also sit here and tell you how they have the best offensive personnel in the National Football League by a very large margin. I could sit here for hours and tell you that. Now, Byron Leftwich is kind of a similar conversation. Best pieces in the offense, or best offensive pieces in the NFL. And it's almost not even, it's them in Dallas. And those are your top two choices, are Kellen Moore and Byron Leftwich. So you need to find a coach who has proven that he can win in certain places. He's a career winner, whether it be college or the NFL. He's proven he can work with a young quarterback who's also mobile, who has many similarities to Justin Fields, that being Colin Kaepernick. He's proven he can make it to the biggest games, including the Super Bowl. He's proven he can develop players and get your team ready to play. Every single one of those aspects and elements should matter more, and matter more to me than this guy, left, right, Leftwich, Moore, Dabble, blank, 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 had these amount of stats in the NFL the past few years, had the 13th best EPA, the 2 yards per game, all this dumb stuff. So, I've played that game before with Matt Nagy. I don't need to play it again. Give me a coach who has won. Give me a coach who can develop players. Give me a coach who can work with a quarterback who has done it in the past. That's what I want, and that's what you can get Jim Harbaugh.
I think you're letting the Matt Nagy hire cloud your judgment here.
Mark Trestman?
I think Mark Trestman was from the CFL. That was completely unprecedented.
Sure, but it was the same ideology.
That was
fresh new offense.
That was so that's the problem. Is it the people doing the hiring? Because it works everywhere else.
So you're proving the point though. If you hire Jim Harbaugh's the safest. He's the safest. He's won before. He's the safest pick. He's the safest pick for head coach. Who is safer than Harbaugh? You're taking a flyer on any guy who hasn't been to a Super Bowl before, technically. I mean, he's the safest. He's gotten you there. And if Jim Harbaugh doesn't work out, you could probably make the argument, then yeah, it's probably other factors, because this guy has done it before and he's proven that he can win in every location. I don't like. If you now there is something to be said for playing the risky game. There is something to be said for taking the flyer on a Leftwich and a Dable. And I'm not going to be angry if that happens. I'll be content, and I will find ways to make me happy about it. But given what we know about the Chicago Bears, given the pain that we've been through, I am totally fine with picking a guy who's been in the Super Bowl, who's a career winner, who is the safer pick. I'm okay with not taking the flyer once in a lifetime here for the Bears. Like I'm fine with that because they've done it in the past, even at different positions, not just at the head coach, quarterback, flyer. Let's take the flyer on Mitch Trubisky, right? Why not? Let's not go with the safe pitch into Deshaun Watson. Screw the safe pick. Let's take the flyer. How'd that work out for you? I think we're tired. I'm ready for the safe pick, Jake. I'm burnt out, man. Aren't you burnt out?
I think you're playing it fast and loose with this definition of a safe pick.
How is that fast and loose? It's the definition of a safe pick.
Because
how is it not? Tell me how it's not.
Because other people's definition of safe would be a coach that's currently in the NFL working with good offenses. I get what you mean. Like, oh yeah, you don't want to look at the stats. The stats is what you want. I get that the people are graded from Matt Nagy and coming. Yeah, we looked at all that when we hired Nagy. I get it. Like, people have different definitions of safe. People are looking. Yeah, we all want different things in a head coach. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are listening to this who are like, yes, Jim Harbaugh is the safe pick. Absolutely. Slam dunk. But there's probably a lot of people who are also like, why would we not take the guy who has just been under Bruce Arians for the last 3 years? Why would we not take the guy who's been under Sean McDermott or Sean McVay or Cliff Kingsbury and learn directly from them? There's a lot of different, like, you can spin this. We could sit here for hours and say what the safe pick actually is. I just think that this is the problem. And back to our conversation of like keeping the status quo, so to speak, you bring in Jim Harbaugh, like, yeah, all right, that's the Bears guy. That's the guy that everyone wants. Like, that's kind of where you're just kicking the can down the road. I get it. I get the appeal of the proven winner. Like, I get the appeal of the proven winner. I get the appeal of the guy that's done it before. But again, like, that was 7 years ago. Like, people leave. Like, Matt Rule's about to get kicked down to college again for a reason. Jim Harbaugh got kicked to college. Like, what do you think the reason was?
Matt Rule didn't make the playoffs one time.
What do you think the reason is that Jim Harbaugh, when he was fired from the 49ers, went to Michigan? Why didn't he get another NFL job?
Because he wanted the Michigan job more. I mean, I think that was a reality.
Come on.
I would have to go back and figure. What do you mean? Come on.
You don't think he would have taken an NFL job? Granted,
there are some guys who are inclined to do it.
Granted, Michigan's a big program, and they gave him a ton of control over the program.
Ton of money too. Like, the money was comparable to an NFL job.
But like, I think there's a reason he didn't get more calls, because there was a grace period there. Like, there was a time in between his firing and his hiring at Michigan. I think there's a reason. Like, I think there's a reason we didn't hear more like these teams are interested in Jim Harbaugh. I think that's why you see guys like Arians get more chances. Mike McCarthy get more stints at it, more shots at it. You know what I mean? Like, I just, the thought of bringing, because this is why I'm so against it, because I think people are just so enticed by what he did before and by him being a Bears quarterback or former Bears player, former Bears quarterback. Like, we've done this whole song and dance with Jim Harbaugh before. Like,
have we though?
Yes, the last coaching search. Harbaugh's name came up in the last coaching search for the same reasons.
Good, as he should.
I think there's a legitimate reason that I think Jim Harbaugh had his time in the sun in the NFL. And I think there's a reason people haven't tried to get him to come back to the NFL. Like Kevin, me and you are early 20-year-olds. Like, we don't know jack shit about how the NFL works. Yeah, we like to guess at it, and that's why we do this podcast, because it's fun, and we like to take these guesses and take these shots. They know more than us, and I think there is a reason. The same reason that, like, guys like Chip Kelly don't come back. There's a reason these guys don't come back. Like,
yeah. Chip Kelly didn't come back because he won like 5 games in his career.
I'm not saying Chip Kelly went to the playoffs multiple times.
Barely. I don't even remember.
I'm not saying they're the same guy, but there's a reason that these guys don't get multiple bites at the apple.
Yeah, but you're mainly talking. You're putting everybody under the same umbrella. Jim Harbaugh is in a totally different umbrella. There's umbrella 1 and there's umbrella 2. And umbrella 1 contains a number of coaches that you describe who, get fired and then don't get brought back and go back to college and for some reason aren't brought back to the NFL. And the reason why those guys and Matt Nagy could be under that umbrella soon is because they weren't career winners. You didn't have reasoning to bring them back. You had no other resume.
Before this year, would you have wanted Urban Meyer? Not knowing what you know about his time in Jacksonville.
I wouldn't have wanted Urban Meyer.
Proven winner, though.
Yeah, but he didn't do it in the NFL.
Okay, but proven winner across for triple the time that Jim Harbaugh's been in college, though.
This is why Jim Harbaugh's under a new umbrella, Jake. This is why you can't compare him to Urban Meyer. You can't compare him to anybody else because he's done it in the past. He's a proven winner in the NFL and in college. And he's clearly Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer was thrust into the wrong situation at the wrong time. I don't think he was equipped to be a quarterback. I think he made a dumb decision or to be a coach. Sorry, not a quarterback. I think he made a dumb decision to do that. I think that's a totally different scenario. But this is why you can't compare these things are independent of each other, because Harbaugh won in the NFL, then won in college, and I have reason to believe he can come back to the NFL and win, because it's not like he was terrible in the NFL, then went back to college, and then people are going to give him another chance. I wouldn't, if he was bad in the NFL previously, I wouldn't give him another chance. I wouldn't. And if he had just been in college, if he had no previous time with the 49ers, and all we knew about Jim Harbaugh was he played for the Bears and he had 6 seasons in Michigan and he beat Ohio State once and they made the playoff once, No, I don't want him. But because of what we know in the past, because he's been in the locker room, because we've heard very good things about his time in the locker room, this isn't just a fluke. There have been very good things to be heard about Jim Harbaugh and his time with the 49ers. The intangible aspects that we talk about that you said weeks ago are just as, if not more important than the numbers that a Dabble, a Leftwich, and a Moore may have on their resume. We've talked about those intangibles, and this is going back to the conversation we had 40 minutes ago at the start of this episode. You need to find a guy that is going to change the brand and change the status quo if you believe, which I do, that a lot of that comes from the head coach. I don't know if Leftwich can do that. I don't know if Dabble can do that. I know Harbaugh can do that because he's done it. And you could argue he did it this year with Michigan, and he gets his team ready to play. Like, we know these things. That's why I say it's safe, is because we have a detailed list of what he's done and what he's good at. Whereas with Moore and Leftwich and these other guys, you may have a guess. We really thought Matt Nagy was going to build a real good culture because we thought we saw it after 1 year. We had 1 year of sample size in 2018, and we had a little bit of hints and bits and pieces from years past with KC. And look what happened. I want a guy who's got the resume, who's done it for multiple years, who's done it in different locations, whether that be college and the NFL, as long as it has happened in the NFL once. And we have that on paper, and we know that the moment he's the head coach, whatever day that may be in mid-January. That's why he's the safe pick. And that's why, again, I'm not going to, Harbaugh is, we'll put his odds at what? Plus 600 maybe, right? Is that safe to be the Bears head coach? Let's throw it out there somewhere. If the Bears hire anyone else, I'm not going to be pissed. I'm open to the fact that they could hire Leftwich and Moore and Dabble. And I think there's a legitimate chance that those guys can be okay. And we do have to kind of throw hindsight away a little bit when it comes to Matt Nagy and understand the fact that it has worked for different teams. But at a certain point, I am a little bit tired of that. As a Bears fan, it would be comforting to know that you have a guy who's done it before. That's all that I'm coming from. And one more thing, I want to ask your opinion on this. There's people out there who think there would be an issue, and these people are dumb, because I could tell you there wouldn't be, because Justin Fields is a competitor and he'll do whatever it takes to win. To the people who think Justin Fields would not work with Jim Harbaugh because he was the head coach of the Michigan football team is outrageous. Absolutely absurd. Yeah. Justin Fields did not have the same allegiance to Ohio State as others did. He was a transfer from Georgia. He's not a hometown Ohio kid.
Well, also, he's in the NFL now. He'll work with whoever
big boy shoes.
Whoever they say, hey, this is your head coach now. Like, I don't think it matters. Like, yeah, it's a little bit different. But all right, I mean, we just disagree about that then. I mean, Harbaugh's your guy.
It's fair.
Honestly,
it wouldn't be fun if we agreed all the time,
right,
Jake.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean,
which is why we don't most of the time.
We disagree on that, and that's fine. I really don't I haven't dove into it yet. I think right now I lean Leftwich, but I mean, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. In 5 days, we hope we'll have some clarity on that situation. I also just think Michigan's not going to let him leave. Like, I think Michigan's going to be like, hey.
What do you mean? They don't have the...
I think they'll throw more money, we know what happens in college sports. Like, behind the scenes, wink, wink, under the table handshake stuff. They'll make something happen. They'll get him more money. They'll get him whatever the hell he wants. But, I mean, we'll see. I mean, we disagree on that, and that's fine. I mean, that's just... is what it is. Real quick, with the last couple of minutes, Bears probably beat the Vikings on Sunday, right?
I think so. Now,
Fields is starting.
Right. We can go a little bit over 8.
I mean, if Matt Nagy pulls the same crap that we saw against the Giants, where he's just not going to play the young guys,
right?
I'm gonna have an aneurysm. Why are we only getting Thomas Graham 3 snaps? Why are we getting Daz Newsome 0? Why are we getting Tevin Jenkins 7 or whatever it was? It's bananas. It's insane. It's stupid. We get it, dude. You're clinging to your job, whatever. You're on your way out. Play the guys. That's what we need to see. Even if you're not going to be here, at least have some pride in being like, hey, these are young NFL players trying to carve out a role. At least do a service by them, you clown.
Right. You want to call yourself a player's coach? Well, do these guys a little help and be a player's coach and get them, in a better position for next year. But it's funny how we talk so much about recency bias, and it exists so much the moment you enter the offseason. Think about last year. How much did recency bias exist last year? We almost nearly erased the 6-game losing streak because they beat the Jaguars and the Texans and the Vikings and the Lions, and they snuck into the playoffs. We erased whatever happened in the beginning of the year because of recency bias. You can't erase most of what happened, but if you go out to Minnesota and they're going to have arguably the same amount of changes as the Bears will. I think Zimmer's gone. I think
Agreed.
they may have some things to explore with Kirk Cousins. If Justin Fields goes to Minnesota, lights it up, and the Bears win by maybe 10 points, you have healthy momentum going to 2022, and people won't forget that Justin Fields' final game, and they'll think about that more than they'll think about the Cleveland game, or they'll think about the other games, as they should, because those other games, to me, the bad games for Justin Fields are greater anomalies to be discussed than are the good games, in my opinion, because we have reasons why the bad games went bad and why the good games went good, and why the bad games went bad were pretty much out of his control, and why the good games went good were pretty much because they were in his control. So what are you expecting from him? He's been injured, he's been out, final game.
I just want him to come out healthy. I mean, don't throw 4 interceptions. Take care of the football, play a clean game. You know how I feel about the whole momentum heading into 2022 thing. But I mean, I agree with you. We want to see some sort of progression from him. We want to see him continue to improve. But you're right. In a way, you're like half right. Like, you can't look at the bad games and say, okay, he's going to be bad. And you can't look at the good games and say, okay, he's going to be good. But right. I mean, it's fair. All one. Like, you can't have one in a vacuum and ignore the other. Justin Fields has had a very up and down year. We'll see what happens. But you hope that when you pair him with the right guy, he can be a solidly above average, if not one day all pro quarterback. And that's what you hope for. But just give me a clean game from Fields. Take care of the football. Don't turn it over. And show me something from the other guys. So show me Tevin Jenkins on the field. Show me Thomas Graham Jr. I'm tired of seeing Artie Burns. I don't care. He's not going to be on the roster next year. I'm over Marquise Goodwin and Damiere Byrd. At least one of those guys
might be back.
Well, at least one of those guys is not going to be on the team next year. Jimmy Graham, thanks for your service. You've been great. Awesome. Thanks for being Walter Payton Man of the Year every year you've been here. See you later. You're not going to be around next year, more likely than not. I don't need to see these guys. Jermaine Ifedi, if you even see the field, I'm going to keel over and have an aneurysm on the floor. I don't need to see the guys that are on the last day of their 1-year contracts. I don't need to see them. Jason Peters has earned it. Fine. He's played great. He's been your best offensive lineman. Fine. He can be out there, but show me some Tevin. If you're up by 10, if you're up by double digits in late in the third quarter, give me Tevin Jenkins. I don't care. Jason Peters, great. Thanks for all you did. Don't need you anymore. Show me the guys that we need to see. And Justin Fields, just take care of the football, play a clean game, show us some kind of show us 80% of the end of the Pittsburgh game. And I'm happy.
Yeah, you'd be very happy with that, because that's what you remember most as you go into the offseason. So here's what we need to happen. We need a Thomas Graham interception. We need a Daz Newsome 80-yard touchdown catch from Justin Fields. We need 5 Tevin Jenkins pancakes. Then we can go in to the offseason content if those 3 things happen. Check those boxes, and we're happy. And then on Monday, once Matt Nagy gets fired, cherry on top, boom. And again, man, it is refreshing to think that we are that close to a new era. And it's like the weekly things, man. It is a pain. I don't think Bears fans know Bears fans do know for good reason. You love this team. This team determines how this team plays, determines how your week is. It does. If the Bears lose on Sunday and you hear bullshit from Matt Nagy all week, odds are it's not going to make your week any better. But if the Bears win and everything's going great and things are awesome and club dub and they're saying the right things in the press conferences, then you have a heck of a lot better of a week. So to know that the pain that you've endured the past 3 years could be alleviated is very, 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 very refreshing. So 4 years too. By the
also, way. Real quick, credit to Robert Quinn, new single season sack record holder of the Chicago Bears. He got to Mike Glennon. 18 is the new record. Build the statue. Love it. I mean, shout out to Robert Quinn. Complete bounce back from last year. We all called him a bust, not worth the money. And a lost year has definitely remade his image in Chicago.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Does NFL Comeback Player of the Year apply only to players who were injured in 2020 in the prior year? Because every year it's a guy who is injured.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
Now,
know
I
the
don't
stipulations
know.
for that. I think it's more leans towards injury because it's way harder and way more glamorous to come back from a catastrophic injury, a la Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, Nick Bosa, than it is from a down year where everyone just hates you because you weren't worth the money. It's like that. It's way more glamorous and it gets way more pub. Like Joe Burrow and Dak Prescott are way more deserving of it than Robert Quinn. Like, what did Robert Quinn go through? Okay, everyone told him he sucked for a year. Like this, and now everybody loves him. It's fine.
I mean, 2 to 18 sacks.
Dak Prescott's foot was hanging off of his leg. You know, Joe Burrow's knee exploded, and now he's led his team to the 2 seed in the AFC. Like
that might be the 1 seed.
It's exactly. It's a little bit different. So I get where you're coming from, but Robert Quinn has never had a chance at it. Like, never had a prayer.
Fair enough. You know what the Bears need? What they really need? They got Justin, who's going to be better. No, Joe Burrow's very, very good quarterback. They need the Bengals to win the Super Bowl or the Raiders, because in the past 2 years, or not the past years, the past year, the Bears beat the Super Bowl champion. Now, if the 2 years in a row we can say the Bears beat the Super Bowl champion, it's something to hang our hat on for a little bit, right? We beat the Buccaneers last year.
Well, they were the
Super Bowl champion.
Super Bowl champions.
They
weren't.
What do you mean the 2B?
Like they were the to be champions. They weren't yet.
Right.
This year you played the reigning champs and you got your ass kicked.
Yeah. You can make a tweet out of it that'll get like 150 likes and it's worth something. So why not? Go Bengals, I guess.
Sure.
Need the Bengals to win Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So we can,
the loss to the Bears is what kick-started 2 Super Bowl runs. We can go with that.
There you go.
There you go. That's the tweet.
That doesn't make it feel good for us, though.
No, honestly. It does not. But hey, maybe the Bears will get there eventually. Who knows? But what we do know, what we think, 99% sure. The next time we talk to you, the listeners and the viewers, is that we will be diving fully into a new head coaching search, because the next time we talk to you will be next week. After the season is over, we will put a bow on the 2021/2022 season, and we will look ahead. And then we will take a little hiatus for the playoffs, and unless there's breaking news as far as coaches go. And then we'll talk through it. And we'll talk through head coaching search. We'll go through all of that. And we're going to be here. We'll walk through it. We'll walk through candidates. We'll walk through not Jim Harbaugh. We'll walk through everybody else. And then we will go through it. And then when that person is hired, we'll get excited about it together. But we will talk to you next week, and we'll start that head coaching search talk. Well, I mean, we kind of started it today, but we'll get real into it next week when we hopefully, fingers crossed, are talking about a head coaching vacancy in Chicago. But until then, dear listener, dear viewer, we love you. We care about you. And as always, bear down.